Jake Summers sat at the green felt table, his cards held close. The World Series of Poker final table wasn't just being watched by millions of humans anymore. Today was different. Today, the whole galaxy was watching. It had started 3 days ago. Jake was playing in an early round when the ceiling of the Las Vegas casino seemed to dissolve. Light poured in from above, not harsh like spotlights, but cool and blue. The players froze. The dealers stopped dealing. The chips stopped clicking. A large ship hovered above the casino. It was smooth and shiny, like polished metal with no seams or rivets. It hummed softly, making the poker chips vibrate on the tables. Then, they appeared. 6 tall figures stood in the center of the casino floor. They hadn't walked in, they just appeared, like someone had turned on a switch. They were about 7 feet tall with blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the casino lights. Each had 4 eyes that blinked in strange patterns, never all at once. Their fingers were long and thin, with 1 extra joint compared to human hands. People screamed. Security guards pulled their guns but seemed unsure where to point them. Camera operators swung their equipment toward the strange visitors, broadcasting the scene to millions of viewers worldwide. The tallest alien stepped forward. "I am Admiral Zorl of the Zolaxian Empire," it said in perfect English. Its voice was deep but somehow hollow, like it was speaking through a tube. "We have been watching your planet for many years." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship above. "We find your species interesting," Admiral Zorl continued. "You have potential, but you are divided and inefficient. The 17 systems under Zolaxian guidance have all benefited from our superior strategic thinking." A man in a black suit pushed through the crowd, some government agent who happened to be nearby. "On behalf of the United States, I welcome you to Earth," he said, voice shaking slightly. "We would like to establish peaceful—" "We are not here for your traditional diplomacy," Admiral Zorl interrupted. "We are here to evaluate." The alien's 4 eyes scanned the room, stopping on the poker tables. "Your game of Texas Hold'em has caught our attention. A game of incomplete information, calculated risk, and strategic deception. It mirrors the greater game of galactic politics." The casino remained silent. Everyone was either too shocked to move or too afraid. "We propose a challenge," Admiral Zorl announced. "A tournament between Zolaxian and human players. If humans prove their strategic worth, Earth will be welcomed as an independent ally in the galactic community. If not, Earth will benefit from Zolaxian guidance and protection." The government agent stepped forward again. "We would need to consult with world leaders before—" "Your world leaders already debate how to destroy us," Admiral Zorl said flatly. "Even now, your military forces are mobilizing. This would be unwise. Our technology is beyond your comprehension. If you reject our challenge, we will consider it an admission of strategic inferiority." Jake had been watching silently, taking in every detail of the aliens, the way they stood, the rhythm of their blinking eyes, the slight movements of their long fingers. As a poker player, he'd spent years studying body language. These aliens might be from another world, but they still had bodies, and bodies told stories. Before the agent could respond, Jake stood up. "I accept your challenge," he said clearly. All 4 of Admiral Zorl's eyes turned to him. "You speak for your planet?" the alien asked. The government agent tried to intervene. "Sir, you can't just—" "My name is Jake Summers," Jake continued, ignoring the agent. "I'm a professional poker player and I accept your challenge on behalf of humanity." He wasn't sure where his confidence came from. Maybe it was the thousands of high-pressure games he'd played. Maybe it was the 3 beers he'd had. Or maybe it was the strange feeling that this moment was somehow meant for him. Admiral Zorl studied Jake for a long moment. "A single human cannot represent your species." "In poker, sometimes one player is all you need," Jake replied. "But I understand. Let's make it a team event. 5 of our best against 5 of yours." The alien's eyes blinked in that strange pattern. Again. Jake made a mental note of it. It seemed to happen when the alien was considering something new. "Acceptable," Admiral Zorl finally said. We will return in 14 of your Earth days. The tournament will last 5 days. The format will be Texas Hold'em, as you call it. The stakes will be your planet's independence. With that, the 6 aliens disappeared as suddenly as they had arrived. The ship above the casino hummed louder for a moment, then shot upward and vanished. Chaos erupted in the casino. Government officials swarmed around Jake. Phones rang. People shouted. Camera crews pushed through the crowd. A stern woman in a dark suit grabbed Jake's arm. "Mr. Summers, I'm Agent Carla Miller with National Security. Do you realize what you've done?" Jake looked at her calmly. "Bought us some time, I hope." "You've committed the entire planet to a poker game against aliens." Jake shrugged. "Would you rather we fight them with missiles? You heard the alien, they're way ahead of us technology-wise." Agent Miller's face softened slightly. "We need to get you to Washington immediately. The president will want to speak with you." The next 12 hours passed in a blur. Jake was flown to Washington on a military jet. He was briefed by generals, questioned by scientists, and finally brought to the White House Situation Room, where the president and his advisors waited. "Mr. Summers," the president said, looking tired and concerned, "I understand you're one of the best poker players in the world." "Top 20, Jake corrected. "But what we need is a team, and I know exactly who we should call." As dawn broke over Washington, Jake made 4 phone calls. He called Linda Martinez, a math genius who could calculate odds faster than computers. He called Steve Campbell, a former FBI agent whose poker face was legendary. He called Diane Wright, known for her unpredictable play style that confused even veteran players. And finally, he called Frank Jones, an old-timer who'd been playing poker since before Jake was born. "We're facing aliens in a poker tournament, with Earth at stake," he told each of them. "Are you in?" All 4 said yes without hesitation. As Jake finally collapsed into bed in his guarded hotel room, he wondered if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life or somehow stumbled into his destiny. Either way, the cards had been dealt. Now it was time to play the hand. The top-secret facility outside of Washington, D.C. buzzed with activity. Jake and his team had been there for 10 days, preparing for the most important poker game in human history. The government had converted an old military bunker into their training ground. One room held 6 poker tables. Another was filled with screens showing every poker tournament the aliens might have watched. A third room contained all the data scientists had gathered about the Zalaxians. Jake looked at his team as they sat around the main poker table. Linda Martinez pushed her glasses up her nose as she scribbled equations on a notepad. At 29, she had both a math PhD and 3 major poker championship wins. "Their ability to calculate odds is probably better than mine," she said without looking. "But I'm finding patterns in how they think." Steve Campbell, tall and gray-haired at 52, nodded. The former FBI agent had spent 20 years reading criminal suspects before becoming a poker pro. "They're logical to a fault. From the limited footage we have, I believe they struggle with the concept of bluffing." Diane Wright, a woman with short red hair and a constant smirk, shuffled cards with expert hands. "Good, because no one bluffs like me." At 34, she was known for making plays that made no sense until 3 moves later when she took all your chips. Frank Jones, the oldest, at 68, sat quietly. His wrinkled face had seen more poker hands than the rest of them combined. "They may understand the math," he finally said in his slow Texas drawl, "but they don't understand the heart." Jake nodded. "That's what we need to focus on. They've been studying our games, but they're studying them like a science problem. They don't get that sometimes poker isn't logical. Sometimes it's about feeling and instinct." Agent Miller walked in with a stack of papers. Since the first contact, she had become their government handler. "New information," she said, dropping the papers on the table. "Our scientists analyzed the video of the aliens from the casino. They believe they found a tell." The poker players leaned forward. In poker, a tell was a subtle behavior that revealed what cards a player held. "Their eyes," Agent Miller continued. "The pattern of blinking seems to change based on how confident they feel. It's not conscious, it's biological, like how human pupils dilate." Jake picked up the papers which contained frame-by-frame analysis of the aliens' eye movements. This is huge. If we can decode this pattern during the game. But they'll be studying our tells too, Linda pointed out. Humans have plenty. Heart rate, sweating, pupil dilation, micro-expressions. Which is why we need to give them false tells, Jake said. We need to control everything about ourselves, even our bodies, and feed them bad information. Steve nodded. Like in interrogations, we can use techniques to control our physical responses. For the next few days, the team practiced not just poker but also control over their bodies. They worked with meditation experts who taught them to regulate their breathing and heart rates. They practiced creating fake tells, little movements they could display when they wanted the aliens to read them wrong. Meanwhile, the world prepared for the tournament. The United Nations had converted their main assembly hall into a poker arena. Major news networks set up cameras. Billions of people waited nervously, knowing their future hung in the balance. The night before the tournament, Jake couldn't sleep. He walked through the empty training facility, thinking about all they had learned. Was it enough? The weight of representing humanity pressed down on him. He found Frank sitting alone at one of the poker tables, slowly dealing cards. Can't sleep either? Jake asked. Frank shook his head. Been playing poker for 50 years. Never thought I'd be playing for the planet. He looked up at Jake. You know, son, I've been thinking about why they chose poker. Jake sat down across from him. What do you mean? Of all the ways to test us, why a card game? They could have challenged us to a science contest or a war game. Jake considered this. Because poker is about making decisions with limited information? Partly, Frank said, dealing 2 cards to Jake and 2 to himself. But I think it's more than that. Look at these cards. You know what you have, but you don't know what I have. I don't know what you have, but I know what I have. We're both missing half the picture. Jake looked at his cards, a 9 and a 3, different suits, a poor starting hand. Now we bet, Frank continued. I have to decide if my half of the picture is better than your half without seeing yours. You do the same. But here's the key. Frank leaned forward. Sometimes the better hand loses because the person playing it makes a mistake, and sometimes the worse hand wins because the person playing it makes the right moves. Jake nodded slowly, understanding. It's not just about the cards, it's about how you play them. Exactly, Frank said, his eyes twinkling. And that's why we have a chance. These aliens, they're probably smarter than us. They've got better technology, more knowledge. But poker isn't just about being smart. It's about being human, about bluffing and taking risks and feeling the moment. And that's something we know better than them. Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Frank was right. They weren't just playing a game of numbers and probability. They were playing a game of human psychology against beings who didn't fully understand humans. The next morning, as the team prepared to leave for the United Nations, Jake gathered them for one final talk. Remember, he said, they think this game is about logic and math. But we know it's about more than that. It's about courage and deception and instinct. Play your cards, but more importantly, play the aliens across from you. Read them, confuse them, make them doubt themselves. Linda adjusted her glasses nervously. What if their minds just work better than ours? Jake smiled. Then we'll have to make sure the game isn't decided by the mind alone. As they walked out to the waiting cars, Agent Miller stopped Jake. The president wanted me to tell you something, she said. Win or lose, what you 5 are doing is brave. The whole world is behind you. Jake nodded, feeling the responsibility, but also feeling ready. The cards would soon be dealt. The fate of humanity would soon be decided. And Jake Summers, who had spent his life playing a game, would now play the most important game in history. The United Nations building had never seen anything like this. The main hall had been transformed into a high-tech poker arena. In the center stood a large round table with 10 seats. Screens hung from the ceiling so the audience could see each player's cards. The room was packed with world leaders, reporters, and selected guests from every country. Jake and his team arrived 3 hours before the start time. Security was tight, Everyone was nervous. This wasn't just a poker tournament, it was a test that would decide Earth's future. The Zolaxians have arrived, Agent Miller announced, checking her earpiece. They're being escorted to their preparation. Room now? Jake nodded. He wore a simple black suit with no tie. The rest of the team was also dressed formally but comfortably. They would be sitting at that table for many hours. Remember the plan, Jake said to his team. Day 1 is about learning. We watch, we gather information, we find their patterns. We don't take big risks today. A UN official approached them. It's time, the world is watching. Good luck to all of you. They walked into the main hall. The crowd fell silent as they entered. Jake felt the weight of billions of eyes on him. Not just those in the room, but those watching on screens around the world. The Zolaxians entered from the other side of the room. There were 5 of them, led by Admiral Zorl. They wore simple, gray outfits that seemed to shimmer slightly as they moved. Their blue skin looked even more unusual under the bright lights. Their 4 eyes blinked in that strange pattern Jake had studied for days. Both teams took their seats at the table. A human dealer stood ready with cards. On the table in front of each player was a small device, the biosensor the Zolaxians had insisted on. It would measure heart rate, skin temperature, and other physical signs. Welcome to the first interplanetary poker tournament, the UN Secretary General said from a podium. The rules have been agreed upon by both sides. Texas Hold'em, 5 days of play, team format. The combined chip count at the end will determine the winner. Admiral Zorl spoke next. We look forward to this test of strategic thinking. May the superior minds prevail. All 4 of his eyes fixed on Jake. The Secretary General nodded to the dealer. Let the tournament begin. The dealer shuffled the cards expertly and dealt 2 cards face down to each player. The first hand of the most important poker game in history had begun. Jake looked at his cards. The King and Queen of Hearts. A strong starting hand. Across from him sat Admiral Zorl, whose eyes were blinking in a steady pattern. Next to Jake was Linda, who had a 7 and a 3, a weak hand. The betting began. The first few hours were tense but measured. Both sides played cautiously, feeling each other out. Jake watched the aliens carefully, noting every blink pattern, every slight movement. The humans used their practiced techniques to control their physical responses, trying to give away nothing through the biosensors. But by mid-afternoon, it became clear the aliens had an advantage. They seemed to process odds with incredible speed and precision. When Linda had a 23% chance of completing a flush, the alien across from her bet exactly the right amount to make calling mathematically incorrect. When Steve had top pair on the flop, the alien facing him seemed to know exactly how strong his hand was. They're reading our biosignals perfectly, Diane whispered during a short break. They know when we're strong and when we're bluffing. Then we need to change our approach, Jake replied. For the rest of today, let's play solid, fundamental poker. No big risks. We'll save our counter strategy for tomorrow. By the end of day 1, the score was troubling. Linda had lost almost all her chips. Steve was down by half. Diane and Frank had managed to stay about even. Only Jake had made a small profit thanks to one big hand where he had bluffed Admiral Zorl out of a pot. The team gathered in their private room, looking tired and worried. They're better than we expected, Linda admitted, running calculations on her tablet. Their ability to process probabilities is beyond human. And these biosensors are working against us, Steve added. They can tell when our heart rate increases, when our palms sweat, all the classic tells. Jake paced the room, thinking. So we need to use that against them. Frank, remember what you said about poker being more than math? Tomorrow we start playing like humans, not like calculators. The next morning, they returned to the table with a new plan. Instead of trying to hide their physical responses, they would create false ones. They had practiced this for days. Steve started by tapping, his fingers rapidly when he had a strong hand. After an hour, the aliens seemed to pick up on this tell. Then Steve started tapping when he was bluffing. The alien across from him folded a winning hand, confused by the mixed signals. Linda controlled her breathing to create the same pattern, regardless of her cards. Diane varied her betting based not on her hand strength but on random factors like the time on the clock. Frank, with his years of experience, played hands in ways that defied mathematical logic, but somehow worked. Jake watched Admiral Zorl closely. The alien's eye-blinking pattern changed when confused, all four eyes blinking out of sync. It was happening more and more as the day progressed. By mid-afternoon on day 2, the humans had begun to claw back some chips. A pivotal hand came when Diane went all in with a weak hand against the second-in-command Zolaxian. By all logic, she should have folded. But she stared the alien down with such confidence that it folded the better hand. The human audience erupted in cheers. "They don't understand us," Jake said during the next break. "They understand poker as a math problem. They don't understand it as a human game." "They're getting frustrated," Frank noted. "And frustrated players make mistakes." As day 2 ended, the humans had recovered some ground. They were still behind in total chips, but the gap had narrowed. Most importantly, they had found a weakness in the aliens' strategy, their inability to cope with human unpredictability. That night, Admiral Zorl requested a meeting with Jake. They met in a neutral room with observers from both sides. "Your play today was perplexing," the alien said. "Your team made choices that contradicted optimal strategy." Jake smiled slightly. "Poker isn't just about optimal strategy. It's about psychology." All four of Admiral Zorl's eyes fixed on Jake. "We have much to learn about each other, it seems." As Jake left the meeting, he felt a strange mix of hope and concern. The aliens were adaptable and intelligent. They would adjust their strategy for day 3. But so would the humans. The real game was just beginning. Day 3 of the tournament began with a different feeling in the air. The humans arrived at the table with new confidence. The aliens seemed more cautious, their movements slightly less fluid than before. "They stayed up all night analyzing our play," Linda whispered as they took their seats. "I can tell by how their eyes are blinking." Jake nodded. The aliens had clearly been studying the humans' unexpected strategies from day 2. Today would be about mental warfare, making the aliens question everything they thought they knew about human poker. Admiral Zorl spoke before the first cards were dealt. "We have observed that humans sometimes employ what you call crazy strategies. We have adjusted accordingly." Jake smiled politely. "Poker has many layers, Admiral. Let's see what today brings." The cards were dealt, and day 3 began. As Jake had predicted, the aliens played differently. They were less reliant on the biosensor data and more careful when humans made unusual plays, but the human team had anticipated this. Today they would use what Jake called controlled chaos. Each human player would adopt a different style. Linda would play strictly by the math, making only plays that were statistically correct. Steve would be extremely tight, playing very few hands but betting big when he did. Diane would be wild and aggressive, raising often and bluffing frequently. Frank would play like he was reading the aliens' souls, making calls that seemed impossible, but were often right. And Jake would mix all these styles, never settling into a pattern. The strategy worked brilliantly in the morning session. The aliens couldn't adapt to 5 different playing styles at once. By lunchtime, the humans had closed the gap further. Linda had doubled her chips by using pure mathematics, ironically, the approach the aliens had started with. Steve had won a huge pot by waiting patiently for hours, then springing a trap when he finally got premium cards. During the lunch break, the team gathered in their private room, energized by their success. "We're getting to them," Jake said. "I can see it in Admiral Zorl's eye patterns. When faced with truly random human behavior, they struggle." Frank nodded. "They need patterns, even complex ones, but they can't handle what they see as complete irrationality." "But they're learning," Linda cautioned. "They're incredibly smart. By the afternoon, they'll have new adjustments." She was right. When play resumed, the aliens had indeed adjusted. They began to mirror the humans' chaotic play, making moves that defied their own logical nature. One alien went all in with a terrible hand. Another folded with a strong hand for no apparent reason. "They're trying to out-crazy us," Diane observed. After a particularly bizarre hand, Jake watched carefully. "Yes, but look at their eyes. The blinking is erratic. This isn't natural for them. They're forcing themselves to play this way, and it's causing them stress." The afternoon became a strange battle of wills. The aliens tried to match the humans' unpredictability, but it clearly wasn't comfortable for them. Their eye-blinking patterns became increasingly disordered. One alien's hands trembled slightly, something they hadn't done before. Frank won a crucial pot when he called an alien's all-in bet with just a pair of twos. The alien had ace-king, a much stronger hand, but failed to improve when the community cards were dealt. It was a call that made no mathematical sense, but Frank had read something in the alien's behavior that told him his small pair would win. "How? Did you know?" Jake asked him afterward. Frank shrugged. 50 years of poker. Some things you just feel in your gut. By the end of day 3, the human team had pulled ahead for the first time. The crowd in the UN hall cheered wildly when the day's final counts were announced. Earth had a narrow lead. That evening, world leaders called to congratulate the team. The president personally thanked them for giving humanity hope, but Jake remained focused. 2 more days remained, and the aliens would come back stronger tomorrow. "They'll try something new," Jake told his team during their evening strategy session. "They realize copying our chaos doesn't work for them. They'll find another approach." "What do you think it will be?" Linda asked. Jake considered this. "They'll try to eliminate the emotional element, make the game as mechanical as possible, slow it down, take time with every decision to calculate perfectly." "So we speed things up," Diane suggested. "Put pressure on them to make quick decisions." Jake nodded. "Exactly, we play fast. We force them to react before they can calculate all the odds, and we keep being unpredictable." As the team prepared to leave for the night, Agent Miller entered with news. "Our scientists have been studying the footage from today's play. They've noticed something interesting about the aliens' physical responses." She handed Jake a tablet, showing close-up images of the aliens' skin. "When they're truly confused by human play, their skin color darkens slightly around the neck area. It's subtle, but it's there." Jake smiled. "Another tell. This is perfect." The next morning, day 4, began exactly as Jake had predicted. The aliens took much longer with each decision, carefully calculating every move. The human players responded by playing quickly and confidently, putting pressure on the aliens to keep up. Jake focused on watching for the slight darkening of skin around the aliens' necks. When he spotted it, he knew the alien was confused and vulnerable. A key moment came when Linda faced off against the third-ranked alien. The flop showed a king, a queen, and a 7. Linda had a king and a 9, a decent but not amazing hand. The alien bet heavily, suggesting great strength. Linda, who normally played by strict math, did something unexpected. She raised significantly. The alien's skin darkened around the neck. Confused by this play, it eventually folded, showing its cards, a pair of aces, a hand that was ahead of Linda's. "I knew it would fold," Linda explained later. "I saw the skin change that Agent Miller showed us." By mid-afternoon, the human lead had grown. The aliens were now playing from behind for the first time in the tournament. Their perfect composure had cracked. Their eye blinking was erratic, their skin tone shifting visibly. As day 4 ended, Earth held a substantial lead. 1 more day remained, the final showdown that would determine humanity's fate. That night, Admiral Zorl requested another private meeting with Jake. "Your species continues to surprise us," the alien said. "We have superior calculation abilities, yet you lead." Jake nodded. "There's more to winning than calculating odds, Admiral." "Yes," Zorl replied, all 4 eyes fixed on Jake. "We are beginning to understand that. Tomorrow will be most interesting." As Jake left the meeting, he felt both confident and cautious. They had a lead, but the final day would be the most challenging yet. The aliens would make one final push, using everything they had learned about human poker. The fate of Earth would come down to the final hands of day 5. The 5th and final day arrived. The United Nations Hall was packed beyond capacity. World leaders sat in the front rows. Billions watched on screens worldwide. Armed guards stood at every entrance. The tension in the room was thick enough to touch. Jake and his team entered to loud cheers. They looked tired but determined. The aliens entered next, led by Admiral Zorl. They appeared perfectly calm again, their earlier signs of stress gone. "They've found their center," Frank whispered. "Today will be their best play yet." Jake nodded. "Stay focused. Remember what got us here. Being unpredictably human." The Secretary General made a brief speech about the historic nature of the event. Then the dealer shuffled the cards for the first hand of the final day. The aliens came out aggressive. They bet heavily, raised often, and put constant pressure on the humans. It was a complete shift from their previous styles. Within the first hour, they had taken back a significant portion of the humans' lead. Linda lost a huge pot when her straight was beaten by an alien's flush. Steve was forced to fold several strong hands due to aggressive betting. Even Diane, usually fearless, found herself backing down from confrontations. "They've mastered our approach," Linda said during a short break. "They're using our own unpredictability against us." Jake studied the tournament standings. The alien team had erased 2/3 of the human lead. At this rate, they would overtake the humans by early afternoon. "Time for our final adjustment," Jake said. "They expect us to be unpredictable now, so let's do the opposite." "You mean play straight?" Steve asked. "Exactly. For the next session, we play perfect textbook poker. No crazy moves, no bluffs, just solid fundamentals." The team returned to the table with their new approach. They played tight and conservative, only entering pots with strong hands, making standard bets, and avoiding confrontations without good cards. The aliens seemed confused by this change. Their eye-blinking patterns showed uncertainty. The darkening around their necks became visible. They had prepared for more human chaos, but were getting textbook play instead. Slowly, the humans stabilized their chip count. They didn't regain what they had lost, but they stopped the bleeding. By lunchtime, they still held a narrow lead. During the lunch break, Jake gathered his team for one last strategy talk. "They'll adjust again for the final session," he said. "They'll expect either chaos or textbook play. So this afternoon, each of us needs to be unpredictable even to each other. Don't tell anyone what you're going to do next. Just play your own game your own way." The team nodded. They understood that the fate of Earth now rested on each of them playing their best individual poker. When play resumed, the final battle began in earnest. The aliens had indeed adjusted, playing a mixed strategy that seemed to anticipate both chaos and order. But they couldn't anticipate what each human would do, because the humans themselves didn't know. Frank won a crucial pot with a well-timed bluff. Diane recouped some losses with an aggressive series of raises. Linda calculated her way through a complex hand to win against superior cards. Steve used his FBI-trained observation skills to pick off an alien bluff. The lead swung back and forth. By late afternoon, the difference between the teams was less than 1% of the total chips. Every hand mattered now. As the final hour approached, players began to be eliminated as their chips ran out. 2 aliens and Linda had lost all their chips. Then Steve went all in with a strong hand but lost to an alien with an even stronger one. Diane followed soon after, leaving only Frank and Jake for the humans against 2 aliens, including Admiral Zorl. Frank played valiantly but eventually lost his chips as well. Now it was just Jake versus Admiral Zorl and one other alien. Earth's fate rested on his shoulders alone. "We are in the final stages," Admiral Zorl announced. "The difference between our teams is negligible. The winner of the next few hands will determine the outcome." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. The room fell completely silent as the dealer shuffled for the next hand. Jake was dealt the 7 of clubs and the 2 of diamonds, statistically the worst starting hand in Texas Hold'em. Admiral Zorl received 2 aces, the best possible starting hand. The flop came: 7 of hearts, 7 of spades, 2 of hearts. Jake had hit a full house, an extraordinarily strong hand. Yet he kept his face neutral, his breathing controlled, his biosignal steady. The alien with fewer chips bet heavily. Jake called. Admiral Zorl raised significantly. The other alien went all in. Jake called again. Admiral Zorl pushed in even more chips. Jake matched each bet. The turn card came, and ace of diamonds. Now Admiral Zorl had 3 aces. A powerful hand, but still inferior to Jake's full house. The alien's eyes blinked rapidly in confidence. He bet aggressively. Jake called. The river card, the ace of hearts. Admiral Zorl now had 4 aces, one of the strongest possible hands in poker. Only a straight flush could beat it, and Jake didn't have that. What Admiral Zorl didn't know was that Jake's full house had just improved to a 7 full of 2s, which still lost to 4 aces. Admiral Zorl pushed all his remaining chips into the center. All in, he said with complete confidence. Jake knew he should fold. The math said to fold. Logic said to fold. But something deep in his gut, the same instinct that had made him a poker champion, told him to call. Call, Jake said. The room gasped as the cards were revealed. Admiral Zorl's 4 aces against Jake's full house. By all normal poker rules, Jake had lost everything. But then the other alien, the one who had gone all in earlier, revealed his cards. The 2 remaining. Aces in the deck. He had been bluffing with a worthless hand. There was confusion at the table. "That's impossible," Linda called out from the sidelines. "There are only 4 aces in a deck." The dealer quickly checked the deck and found the problem. Somehow, there were 6 aces in play. The room erupted in chaos. The Secretary General called for calm and ordered an immediate investigation. The extra aces were traced to the second alien, who had been using advanced technology to switch cards. Admiral Zorl stood slowly, eyes fixed on his teammate. "You have shamed the Zolaxian Empire," he said coldly. "We pride ourselves on strategic superiority, not cheating." The cheating alien was removed from the room. Admiral Zorl turned to Jake and the UN officials. "The Zolaxian Empire honors its agreements, even in defeat. We acknowledge that humans have demonstrated superior strategic thinking through adaptability and unpredictability. Earth will be recognized as a sovereign ally in the galactic community." The room exploded in cheers. Jake was surrounded by his teammates, all embracing in celebration. They had done it. They had saved Earth not through superior technology or military might, but through the uniquely human qualities of creativity, adaptability, and intuition. As the celebration continued around him, Jake found himself face to face with Admiral Zorl once more. "Your species has much to teach us," the alien said. "We have mastered logic, but you understand something more, the value of intuition." Jake smiled. "Maybe that's what makes us different. Species worth knowing. You calculate the odds better than we ever could. We follow our gut when the odds don't make sense." Admiral Zorl extended a hand in the human gesture they had learned. "I believe this will be the beginning of a beneficial relationship between our worlds." As Jake shook the alien's hand, he couldn't help but add, "Next time, maybe we'll teach you how to play blackjack."